My dad worked most of the time.
Right.
He was in that bakery. I mean, now this is a picnic what we have here.
Right.
Because they were there, I would say, anywhere between 12 and 16 hours a day.
That was Mike Soracco, who owns Liguria Bakery in North Beach. I'm your host, Jeff Hunt. This is Storied San Francisco, a weekly podcast where San Franciscans from all walks of life share their stories, and you get to know your neighbors. So, focaccia. Who doesn't love focaccia? In this episode, Mike takes us back to the founding of his family's focacceria in 1911. If your mouth is watering by the end of this podcast, Liguria's hours are 7 a.m. to 1 p.m., closed on Sundays and Mondays. The bakery is open on Saturdays until noon. Special thanks to Lauren Lim and Richard Alyoung for introducing us to Mike. Once again, please excuse the mask muffling and occasional wind in the recording. Here's Mike.
I'm the owner of Liguria Bakery, and I've been working full-time here since 1981.
When you were how old?
I was 25 when I came here.
Okay.
So I've been here 40 years working full-time, but prior to that, I would work on the weekends and also on holidays, helping out because my dad was there and I'd help him do the deliveries, and then of course on the holidays when it was busier. So I would say when I was about 15. So I've been 40 years as an owner, but 10 years prior to that. So I've been 50 years there working.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
So on that topic, can we go all the way back to before Mike Soracco, to the Can we hear the story about, you said it was your grandfather?
Yes, my grandfather came here around right after the earthquake, 1907, and he worked, I guess, as this is kind of sketchy. This is because I've never met him, and this is my dad never really talked a lot about it, but this is what I found out through other sources and through other family members. He came here approximately 1907, and he worked in some bakeries up on Grand Avenue and Union Street. And then in 1911 is when they came to this location here.
Do you know where in Italy? I'm assuming, but where in Italy from?
They came from basically the general area I could say is Genoa, but the Chiavari and Cicagna area there in Italy.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I've never been. I'm embarrassed to say, but so
one day.
Yeah. So he started this. Used to be prior to the earthquake there on the location where we're at. It was a church.
Oh, wow.
So I guess it was leveled out during after the earthquake in 1906, and apparently it turned into what we have here now. So it's been here since probably, the exact date I don't actually know, but I know the business started around 1911. That's just what we...
So yeah, I mean, obviously you didn't know. I mean, you said that the stories are a little spotty, but...
Well, yeah, because, unfortunately... my dad was only 10 years old when his father passed away.
Okay.
So he really didn't know much either. And what happened was my grandmother at the time when my grandfather passed away had to hire men to work because there was other partners. They were basically, in those days, a bread bakery.
Okay.
They made basically the bread.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to focaccia, a little was one of their smaller items. And then as time went on, I can remember when I was a kid, focaccia, unless you were Italian, no one knew what it was.
Right.
And now focaccia, you go to any restaurant, people have focaccia sandwiches. I'm sure you're familiar with it and stuff like that. So he, from the time when my grandfather passed away in 1938, they hired some men to work to fill in his time that obviously he had passed away. He wasn't there. And then my dad, as soon as he graduated high school, they threw him right in the bakery.
Can we go back just real fast? Do you happen to know how old your grandfather was when he opened, and do you know whether he already spoke English, like that kind of thing? Because I'm thinking he was a young immigrant,
Yeah, he spoke English. I know that, I do know, and I believe I know when he passed away in 38, he was in his low 60s.
Okay,
so
he was in his
the
probably
exact
20s.
date right now I can't really recall.
But let's say 20s or so when he opened this business.
Because he opened it, he would probably in his mid to that's how the math would work out. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now let's jump back to your dad.
Yeah.
And his involvement.
Yeah,
So obviously grew up with his
well,
parents owning this.
Yeah, my dad, like I said, right out of high school, he started working here in the bakery, and he stayed there until he passed away. Unfortunately, he passed away it's about 7-8 years ago now.
Okay.
And he was 84 when he passed away, and he worked 66 years in the bakery.
So, and survived the bakery in '89 quake. Was there any damage?
I was also there in '89 too.
Oh,
now.
you already
I
working.
came in '81.
Okay, then let's back up again.
Actually, this is, you say July the 1st today. This is exactly for me is the 40th. This would be my first day 40 years ago.
Congratulations.
Exactly. For full time, yeah.
Let's then let's talk a little bit about your childhood. So not necessarily the bakery, if the bakery's involved, yeah, but like, you're I hate the term unicorn, but there are fewer and fewer born and raised San Franciscans anymore. You're one of them. Let's hear what it was like to grow up, I'm assuming, in North Beach.
Well, I grew up in North Beach, and I lived within a 2-block radius of the bakery and lived on top of the bakery for probably 2 or 3 years. And then I lived over on Lombard Street, and then where my father and mother's residence was, now where my mom lives, is on Stockton Street, just a block and a half up.
Oh.
So I went to school right down here, right at St. Peter and Paul School. I started there in kindergarten. I went all the way through 8th grade. Then from there, I continued on to high school at Sacred Heart High School. Now it's called Sacred Heart Cathedral.
Right.
And that's up on Ellis Street, and I stayed there. And I went to college for 2 years and kind of avoided...
Outside of the city, or?
No, I just went to San Francisco City College.
SF State or State
College?
I
went to State in the beginning, and then I kind of stayed. It didn't work out for me. Yeah. And I went back to City. I completed my 2 years there in general education and didn't know what I wanted to do, but I always had in the back of my mind I would probably end up at the bakery.
Right.
Just to keep it going, because other family members weren't interested, and I hated to see it go by the wayside.
Yeah.
So I worked there with my dad from '81 until he passed away. So
just recently.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the years right now are kind of.
That's fine. No, time is irrelevant.
So we worked. Yeah. So
you must have grown up in the '70s, '80s San Francisco.
I graduated from St. Peter and Paul in 1970.
What was San Francisco like then? Can you?
Well, as a young kid, it's kind of, it was a whole different thing. I mean, we basically, as myself, I spent most of my time, not so much in school, but we spent a lot of time at the boys' club, right, which is right there where we're.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and we would basically, as kids, after you got out of school, go home, change your clothes, go back to the club. It closed at 5 o'clock. Go home and eat dinner. Go back at 7 o'clock. Stay till 9 o'clock. Then go home, do your homework or whatever, or preferably do your homework first before you did that. And we spent, I grew up, I'm very, very, how do you say, appreciative of having the opportunity to have that club, because I don't think many youths have that opportunity to just right down the block from you,
right,
just to go. And I was very athletic and played sports in high school and stuff like that.
What sports did you play?
Basketball and baseball.
Okay.
Yeah, but mainly in basketball in high school.
And was that through the club or the school?
Well, no. Then they had through the school they had the CYO leagues and all that, and then in high school I played for the high school team, and I played in various AAU teams and stuff like that. Right. I did quite a bit of basketball actually.
As a kid, did you get around the city much? And if so, what neighborhoods would you?
In those days, no. We normally stayed basically to our neighborhoods then. That's just the way, until we were able to drive when you were in high school. Then you went, kind of hung out with some friends that you met then and all that. But otherwise, it was basically in this area here.
Yeah, not even a little bit downtown, or
not too much.
Even, okay.
A little bit of Chinatown once in a while. Maybe sometimes downtown. We go with my parents down there or stuff like that. But it was normally, actually, it might sound unfortunate, but My dad worked most of the time.
Right.
He was in that bakery. I mean, now this is a picnic what we have here.
Right.
Because they were there, I would say, anywhere between 12 and 16 hours a day.
Wow.
And then on a holiday time, it was non-existent. I can just, a tidbit, remember, like even on Christmas Eve, we would have to open up our presents on Christmas Eve, like at 6 o'clock at night, because my dad had to go back to work at midnight.
I was going to ask.
And he was like sitting there falling asleep. I mean, they really, those guys, I've experienced working with them. They really worked hard in those days. Long hours, tedious,
And did they complain?
No, never. Never.
Yeah,
never.
Exactly. That was just
never
a fact
once.
of life. Yeah.
The only thing is, if you want to call it a complaint, everyone, well, I'm a little bit tired, you know. But other than that, because when you work in a bakery, unfortunately, it's early hours, so you don't sleep much.
And you're on your feet the entire.
And you're on, and it's on cement.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
And it's hot.
And you saw that when you were back there. It's at least around 82 degrees in that back there. So on a day where in San Francisco, which are rare when it gets up in the 90s, it's about 100 degrees in the back there.
Right.
So if you're not used to it, it gets hot awful quick all of a sudden.
Yikes.
Yeah.
So because you grew up in the kind of culture of the bakery, I want to know, when did you realize that it's something special?
You know, it really didn't dawn on me at first as a young child. You know, I just knew the people liked it, and then, as you gradually got older and through high school and all that, it kind of started. The realization started to come into me that, people would even tell me, friends would say, or parents of friends would say, you don't know how big of a part of San Francisco that you are. That this place has been here. Now, all the mom and pop places now, there's very few of us left, whichever ones there are.
Right.
And I just kind of think it's kind of the reason why I've hung in with it so long is because I'd like to keep it going as long as I can.
Yeah.
And
can we hear that story then? I guess so. So you already worked here for a little bit, and then
I worked. Like I said, I used to work here on the weekends and holidays. And then I had a few other odd jobs. I mean, I worked at the Gap. I worked at numerous places. I worked for a bar supply place up the street for a couple of years that was there. And I just did those jobs eventually while I was going through college and that. And then finally, when one of the gentlemen that my father was partners with retired, that's how I became in, because I knew my father wasn't going anywhere. And in those days, there was three partners. So I became partners with my father, and there was one other when I got in the bakery in 1981. I think back in the beginning when my grandfather was there, they had up to almost 5 partners.
Wow. Okay.
And they used to, I can go back to even the days where they used to deliver the bread. Right down the street here by North Beach Playground, they used to park the horse. They had the horses and the wagon. They used to deliver the bread by horse and wagon.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Have you seen photos of any of that
Yeah,
stuff?
there's very few. I mean,
Okay.
I've got one in the bakery there. I can show you later on, maybe.
Let's try to get
of
a
my
picture.
grandfather. There's one in the store. But otherwise, other than that, it just seems that not much records were kept. I guess I don't know if they were just not aware, or if it's not that they didn't care about it. I just didn't think that they just took it for granted,
It's probably related to the complaining thing. It's like their work was just a fact of their life.
Yes, yeah.
Big one.
Yeah.
But they didn't necessarily feel the need to document it.
Correct. I think so.
Right?
I think you're right. Yeah.
Let's go back, because I wanted to hear your thoughts on North Beach when you were growing up versus North Beach now.
To how it is now.
Yeah.
Well, it's like night and day. Back then, like I say, I mentioned going to the boys' club. I mean, then you were. I mean, as a kid, 7 years. I think in those days, the boys' club, I think you had to be 7 to join.
Okay.
I mean, we would walk out in the street and go at night and everything. Where now, nobody's going to let a 7-year-old kid go to. And we were very comfortable. You knew everybody. You knew everybody in the neighborhood. I mean, I wouldn't walk. I mean, you notice even a couple people come and say hello to me just seeing me here now, but it's changed so much. It's not the local community it was in years when I grew up. And not even close.
I don't know if you agree with me, but I've been here 20 years. I've been here long enough to see a lot of neighborhoods change.
Yeah.
And I agree with what you're saying, but I also think that compared to other neighborhoods, North Beach has changed maybe the least. I mean,
Yeah, I guess that's probably fair assessment.
well, you don't get a lot of big national chains or
No, that's one thing they've kept out is they've kept out like the big coffee. They've tried to keep the small coffee shops, not let any of the bigger ones in or bigger chains of other drugstores and all that to a extent. I mean, I think they've done a fairly decent job of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, going back again one more time in time.
Okay.
When did the bakery shift from? You said they were making bread and focaccia. When did it become focaccia?
It started by now. I'm 64. I can never remember them making bread. Okay.
So it was before.
So I don't
day.
know yes, but I remember they used to sell bread from another bakery because we had a bakery right up the street here. It was Italian French bakery. It was there for years, and we used to get bread from another bakery just to have it because customers were used to neighborhood people used to come in and having bread. But I think what happened, the way I heard the story from my father, was back in the years when you had the big companies. I don't want to mention any names, but they would go into the places where my dad would go to, and they would say, okay, we'll give you a free month's bread if you undersell. So those Italian guys in those days, they were pretty hard-headed or very stubborn or whatever you'd like to call it. The famous line that my father would always say was, before we give bread away, we leave the flour in the sacks.
Okay.
I heard that numerous times.
Okay.
So what happened was they'd go into these places and they would tell my father, well, so-and-so company said they're going to give us a month free and maybe charge us, in those days I think the bread wholesale was a nickel.
Yeah.
Probably around a nickel.
Right.
And they used to take credits.
Oh.
So, what was to stop somebody from ordering, give me 100 breads today? And you go back there, I only sold 50, here's 50 back. Well, that stopped as soon as I got in the bakery because we did when I first started, they were doing that with the focaccia on our wholesale accounts.
No, that's gold.
So I told my dad, I said, what are you guys doing here? What's to stop them? Well, they don't do that. Well, you're thinking like the old times. They didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays, nobody wants to run out. So, and it really wasn't that much of a problem with returns when I was there. But I just said, no, that's ending.
And so the switch to focaccia only happened.
It happened before me, and it was pretty popular, even though it was not a thing like we're like you say, you go into restaurants now, and focaccia sandwich, this and that. People just bought focaccia to buy focaccia. Italian people knew of it.
Right, and I was going to ask, do you know at that time that the switch was made, were there other bakeries making focaccia?
Very few, I would say. Very few. Now there's a lot of it being made, but you would normally say that focaccia was only made, by us.
This podcast is going to go on record as saying you guys are like the godfathers.
Well, you can't say we're the godfathers of it because it was made in Italy and all
but
that.
in San Francisco.
Yeah, in San Francisco. Well, we're probably the first ones that actually started making it. Now, like they say, everybody tries to make it, but
you put it on the map.
Yeah,
you guys are the originals.
But that's all we make because we do it right, and we use all the top ingredients. We don't cut any corners. You saw the back. It's all old school.
Yes.
We don't even use a digital scale. It's a brick oven. It's been there. It's the original oven that's been there since it opened.
11 at least.
Yeah.
Mike, maybe we could end if you'd like to talk about the shift that you had to make during the pandemic with the business.
Yes.
Going into that, it's a big, broad topic, but
basically what happened was I was first of all very concerned with what was going to happen. What the health department was going to let us do. Mm-hmm. So we've been in touch with that and followed all the guidelines that we could. So we never closed. That's the one thing I can say. We didn't close any days at all.
Oh wow! Okay.
So we were able to stay open the whole time. And under certain guidelines. The only thing is, right now, I would say we're operating maybe a little better than half of what we normally do.
Okay.
Not only because of not having restaurant business, but also because of the people not coming out, stay in place.
Right. Were you able to retain your staff?
Yes, everybody stayed,
excellent.
and that was the main thing. It was my
Awesome.
main concern, was to keep everybody there. Unfortunately, I only have 3.
Hey.
Besides myself. So one of them is my daughter, so and she just had a baby, so she's not there now, but she's coming back Friday.
Okay.
So I've got a first grandchild, 5 months old. So it'll be so.
Wow. So you guys didn't close at all.
We didn't close at all. We stayed.
Wow.
We changed the hours now. We're only open from 7 till noon during these times, and
Weekends also, or
we're always closed on Sundays and Mondays. Those
Got
are
it.
the days that we.
Tuesday
Well,
to
when I
Saturday.
first came in the bakery, to get off the side here, we worked 7 days a week.
Right.
There was no closing, and I can even remember. This is way off the side here. Is working on Christmas, working on Thanksgiving, working on New Year's, all the holidays, and finally, when I had my daughter that's coming, but the one that had the baby. When my first child was born, my wife looked at me and goes, "You're not doing this." So
you didn't
I
need
can't
labor
say-
laws. You had
I
your
can't
wife.
say I made the decision. And my
Yeah.
dad said to me, he goes, "What do you mean? What are people going to do? How are they going to buy bread?" I said, "They're just going to have to buy it the day before."
Right.
And in those days those guys, I've worked with them, so I know how they are. They would be very particular to serve fresh product, every day. It had to be fresh, I said, people aren't like that anymore. And the one that really kind of put us over the edge, or not put us over the edge, is I remember, because I lived with this is when I would meet my father up there, and I'd park my car up there and we'd walk down to work, in the morning, and it was Christmas Eve night when people were coming from midnight mass, and my dad and I were walking down, getting ready to start Christmas morning to start baking at 1 o'clock in the morning, so people would have focaccia on Christmas. And somebody came up and said to us, "Where are you guys going?" And I said, "We're going to work on Christmas. Are you guys crazy?" And I looked at my father. I go, "That's it. We're done." I said, "We're doing it this time, and I'm not doing it anymore." And he goes, "Oh, I don't know I had another partner. I don't know." I said, "Believe me, he's going to go right for it too. Nobody likes working on Christmas."
The day off.
So we started doing it. We got a lot of flack about it.
Sure you did.
Old time people, geez, what am I going to do on Thanksgiving now? I don't have bread. Well, you got to come the day before. Oh, it's going to be a day old. Well, we have a life too.
Yeah.
So I still worked up until we did the 7 days a week, up until probably maybe 15 years ago.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it's not that far along. And then we started closing on Sundays, just because it kind of changed around. The 49ers weren't doing as well. We were
Right.
real busy, on Sundays with football, back when that was on. And then the church also, too. Not as many people go anymore.
Right.
Because before, I can remember as a kid, they used to leave Mass early just to, after the communion, just to beat the line at Liguria Bakery, because
wow.
people would go up and buy the focaccia. And then so if you left right after that, they sneak out the back door and go up.
Wow.
But so then we started doing the Monday closing, because like some of these days, like Memorial Day, Labor Day, fell on a Monday and everything. And I told my dad, then I go, "This is kind of nice that we're closed at 2 days, Well, you want to close? Let's do it again." I said, "Yep, let's do it."
All right.
I said, "We can get by it with it." I said, and then we kind of worked it out with our wholesale people that. So it's been that way probably for at least maybe close to 10 years that we've closed
Sunday and Monday.
the Sunday and Monday.
Okay.
And believe me, it's like night and day.
You're good with it.
That 7 days a week was really, I mean, your life is, but that's how my dad and those guys did it. And that's how I learned how to do it. See,
Yeah.
they worked every day, they came.
And long hours.
And long
early
hours.
hours.
I mean, like now, I got here this morning, I got here about 3:15, but by 10 o'clock now, I'm home.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? But then in those days, the bakery used to stay open until 6 o'clock.
Okay.
It was different. It was more community oriented. Like I said, people would come in. Now people come in the morning. That's it. So
Do you guys sell to restaurants? Are you in any
we have
restaurants?
some. The one right across the street here, Mario's is like
yeah.
one of our best customers.
Okay.
They make the focaccia sandwiches there, and
Yes,
they're
they do.
one that I'm hoping that once the restaurants come back, because They're there every day, and they're good because they tell people who they buy the focaccia from, and so it works out both ways. They've been a customer of ours for many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have a few others restaurants, but mostly we have maybe 3 or 4 either delis or markets
Stores
that carry it.
shops.
I've kind of tended to get away with the wholesale, got away from the wholesale. They used to have it before, like I said, when I used to deliver and help those guys when I was in high school and all that. They used to have about a dozen stops then. Now I think we have 3.
Okay.
So because as you notice, the delis now are not
currently.
There's not really that many around, and the reason for that, I think, is now you go into stores like Safeway, Molly Stone's, whatever you could any of the names. They all have delis in them.
Right.
In those days before, there was no delis in the supermarkets.
Just a market.
It was just a supermarket.
Right.
And then if you wanted to go to a deli, I mean, in North Beach here, I can mention there was at least 4 or 5 delis here.
Right.
Now I think there's
Molinari's still there.
And Palermo or one of those little ones like that.
And then Tony opened his right over here.
Giovanni's. He gets focaccia from us.
Oh, he does?
Yeah, he does. Giovanni
does. You hear that, everyone? Yeah. Anything else about you or the bakery that you want to get in?
The only thing you had, just to get back when you asked about during the COVID, what we did is actually we kind of brought into it. We started selling our dough, and we started making bread, but just the little loaves.
Yeah.
And just because the kids were out of school, and I had parents coming in, and the one fellow that's working with me now said, because he used to work for Luca Deli that was on 22nd in Valencia, Steve Corabelli, and he said, we should sell a lot of dough out there. And I used to say, I don't want to sell the dough because we're here to sell the
finished product.
Finished product.
Yeah.
So we started selling the pizza dough. So I got quite a few parents that lived locally that would give a project for the kids to do.
Awesome.
So we started selling the bread and the dough, and it's kind of actually worked out. While some of the focaccia sales that we lost during this pandemic, we kind of made up a little bit with that.
Nice. And you're still doing that?
Yeah, we're still doing that, and it's actually going fairly well.
Cool.
It's kind of keeping interest because the dough is really good.
Yeah.
And people are now, bringing it home, making pizzas out of it, and everybody likes pizza, right?
That was Mike Soracco. On the next episode of Storied San Francisco, you'll get to know poet Tongo Eisen-Martin. Please join us for episode 29 next week. Music for Storied San Francisco is by Otis McDonald. Photography is by Michelle Kilfeather. The show is hosted and produced by me. Michelle and I have produced more than 120 episodes over the last 3 years, and you can find them all over at our website, storiedsf.com. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, as well as just about everywhere you can listen to podcasts. Please subscribe to stay up to date on all the content we publish. And if you have any feedback for us, or you just want to say hi, our email is storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Stay strong, stay safe, and stay healthy.